Well, hey there, guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to do a little bit of wood burning. Now, we've done a couple wood burning tutorials here on the channel before, but the other ones that we've done always incorporated some kind of pattern from a book. In fact, both of them were from books. And I realized, you know what, people may not want to purchase books to be able to get patterns or to get pictures to wood burn. So we're going to do something a little different today. So without further ado, let's get into the project. Well, the first thing that we're going to look at is the material that we will be wood burning. Now, guys, normally I use plywood, and the reason I use plywood is because it's a little more stable. It's a lot easier to predict what the wood burner is going to do on that. But this time we have this, I guess it's about a 3/4 inch thick cookie that's been sliced off of a tree. I don't know what type of wood it is, and it really doesn't matter. I just wanted something a little different, a little more rustic. So this particular slice is roughly, for our burning area anyway, it looks like it's about 7 inches in diameter. So the very first thing that I want to do is I want to get a piece of paper and I want to draw a 7-inch diameter circle and then cut it out. Now, what this is going to represent is going to be the template for our working area. If we take our wood blank here and lay our paper over top, we can see that we're within our working area, and this would be where our picture is going to show. We're not going to use a pattern from a book. We're not going to use something downloaded from the internet. Something quite different. I have some adult coloring books, and they are of landscapes. So I've chosen a couple of items that I think would be good to wood burn, or that would look good in a wood burning. And I have my circle here, and basically I just want to lay the circle over top to see if it's going to work in my little area here. And honestly, I think these are a little too big for this circle. So what I'm going to do before I transfer my pattern, I'm going to photocopy these. I'm going to reduce them. I'm going to say about to 80%, and then I'll be able to see which one looks better in the circle, and then I can choose which one I want to wood burn. Well, I have both my photocopies. I actually did them at 83%. I know 3% doesn't make that much of a difference, but I'm using my overlay to place over top of the photocopies just to see which one I like better. And out of the two that were chosen, honestly, I like this one better. So we'll put this one aside. Maybe we'll do that one another time. It just doesn't go with the circle of the wood cookie for me. So what we're going to do is I want to line this template up as best I can to the way that I want it for our wood burning. And I'm just going to roughly, it doesn't have to be perfect, guys. I'm just going to use our template here to draw a circle, and we're going to cut this out to give it the shape of our wood burning. And with that cut out, it will give you a pretty good idea as to how it's going to look here on the center of your piece of stock. So guys, now it's time to transfer what we have here on this drawing onto our blank. So for that, we're going to use a little bit of graphite paper. Now guys, this is graphite paper, and basically if you want to kind of give a loose definition of it, it is pencil lead debris that's attached to the back of tissue paper. It is essentially erasable carbon copy. So I don't like using the old style carbon because with that you can't erase it if you make a mistake on your piece. So what we're going to do, I've cut a piece here to be the circle of our project. I'm going to line up where I want it with the graphite paper underneath. I'm going to use some tape, and we're going to tape this down really well so that it just does not move while we're working on it. And once we get that done, we're going to use a ballpoint pen with light pressure to be able to trace our design down onto our stock. I say light pressure, guys, because you don't want to indent the wood. If you put indentations on the wood, it's going to show in your burning. Now, one of the reasons I say to use the ballpoint pen is because, of course, the photocopy is black. My ballpoint pen, blue. So it's very easy for me to see what it is that I have marked and traced and what I haven't. So if you want, you can even use something like red. I've done that before, and that works really well also. Okay, so I'm going to get all of this marked out onto the wood, and once I get that finished, I'll come back and see you, and we'll go through what burner parts and what burner tips we're going to use to complete this project. So once you're done tracing your design, don't just tear your pattern off. You want to lift the edges and just look to make sure that you have everything that you want transferred onto here. This is a very light transfer. So don't be surprised if throughout the burning process you need to take your pencil and redraw some of these lines. It's bound to happen. So this looks pretty good. There were a couple areas up here with the clouds that didn't transfer, only because I've used this graphite paper multiple times already. But for the most part, this looks pretty good. So I think we can start our burning at this point. So some of the equipment we'll be using today is, for starters, I have the Razortip SSD10. This is a double port that you can use more than one pen at the same time. You just flick them or change them by clicking to either channel A or channel B. They do share the same heat setting though, so you want to be aware of that. Don't think that you can have one at a lower setting and then flick back and forth between them. You're also going to want some kind of glove, guys. I like these little kind of leather palmed gardening gloves. They keep the dexterity and give you the ability to use the wood burning pens just as well as if you had bare hands, but the leather protects you from the heat of the pens themselves. Because even though they have these little foam kind of pads to help cushion that heat, these things still get hot, guys, over time. As you use them, they do generate more and more heat, and it can get uncomfortable if you are using them for any length of time. So I'm going to be using several nibs today. I'm going to be possibly using a writing tip. I will also be using a skew chisel tip, as well a smaller skew chisel tip, because this is a smaller burning. And most definitely we will be using a shading spoon. This is another form of shading type tool. I'm not sure if we're going to get into the chisel type shading tool or not, but because of the larger tools being the shading tools especially, you're going to need the heavy duty cord that takes the extra amperage from the larger tools for shading. So one of the last things we have here, guys, and this is kind of an addition. You guys know that I like to use a venting fan. My previous one was 120 volts, but I picked this one up off of Amazon. This is a low voltage venting fan with the hose, so you could actually vent it right out the window if you want. This is actually marketed as a venting kit to make your own laser engraver enclosures. I think it was like 20 bucks or something like that. I'll post a link to it down below. But we're gonna try this today and see how we make out. So I'm not sure how much noise it's going to project onto the audio of this video, but hopefully it won't be too bad and you'll still be able to hear me all right with the lapel microphones. Also, guys, while you're burning, it's also a good idea to have your original pattern here close by for quick and easy reference, just in case. You know, sometimes things get muddy, when you're trying to trace it down. And if you need to verify something, it's always best to verify off the original. Don't even verify off the photocopy that you use to transfer, because your lines from your ballpoint pen are going to make that muddy as well. All right, so I'm going to get my glove on here. And the first thing we're going to do is I think we're going to work on the windows of the house and possibly the small houses in the background. Now, in order to mark these windows, I'm going to be using a skew tip here. I think this one might be a little big, but I have said before that I'm a huge promoter of having a burn test board. Guys, that is to test your settings and to test how things are going to burn on the actual stock itself. It's pretty hard to do that because your test board has to be the same species as what it is that you're burning with. And unfortunately, we don't have extras of this. We have the one and the one only. So we're kind of taking a chance here on this entire burning. But it is much better to go light and then darken later than what it is to, try to get it all in one shot. Well, I got this much done and realized I was feeling a bit of the heat. It kind of confused me there for a minute until I realized in all the kind of hustle and bustle of filming, I forgot to put my glove on. So guys, buildings are a great way for beginners to get into wood burning. The reason being is that there's so many crisp, clean lines that you really don't need a ton of skill to do it. You don't have to have a lot of experience at wood burning to be able to get a good result, because essentially right now we're just outlining everything. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go around this entire building and I'm going to carefully outline all of the windows and all of the straight lines. Now, I'm not sure how much noise this fan is creating on the video, but if it's noisy, I apologize. But honestly, I'd rather have a noisy video than to breathe in the smoke that the wood burning creates. I'm just looking at this. I think I'm a little heavy on those lines. So I'm just going to back down the temperature just a little bit. Now there's two ways that you can lighten the lines here. You can reduce the temperature of your actual pen, which will help greatly, or you can speed up your hand. In other words, you can draw faster. So for the beginner, it might be better off for you to lower the temperature so that you don't have to get so much into the speed control of things. Guys, as well, I'm going to point out, you may notice that I'm rotating my piece here. The reason for that is the skew chisel. The skew chisel is not a big fan and really doesn't like to be moved in ways other than being drawn, kind of pulled straight on the board. It doesn't like curved lines, although you can do them. It prefers nice straight lines. So to avoid having to try to manipulate this even more, it's easier to rotate my piece of wood than what it is to try to get the skew chisel to do something that it doesn't like to do. Now here's something here. We have a growth ring that is not accepting the burning very well. It's actually resisting it quite a bit. So on those areas of those dark growth rings, I'm slowing down the travel of the pen quite a bit to get it to give some extra burn in there because it's just not taking. Okay, and I'll just turn this around for you. And we can see that we've got the building here as well as the steps. Most of the straight lines kind of drawn in. I didn't bother getting into these little houses over here. We can do those later. But what I do want to do is show you a technique for getting kind of trees or bushes. And all down along here on the side, I'm interpreting this here as trees or bushes. So what I have is a large shading spoon. I've turned the heat up quite a bit, 7 out of 10. And what we're going to do is, starting where the trees are around here, we're just going to go in little circular motions, just like this, all the way where there's trees. Now guys, this is going to create different shades, especially here with these growth rings that are not taking to the burning very well. It's going to create quite a bit of contrast, I guess we'll call it. And there is no absolutes because every material is different. So I'm going to have to keep adjusting the temperature of this shading spoon as I go, adjusting the temperature and as well adjusting the speed with which I'm moving it around. You're not trying to duplicate bushes exactly. You're trying to give the illusion that they're there. This is kind of the secret of wood burning. You're not trying to recreate an exact copy. So it is much better to start off low with light shading and then build on it. It gives you more depth. If you get too heavy right off the bat, it really just muddies up your project. So try not to do that. I know it's hard because you really want to get those dark lines. You want to get those dark bushes, and everyone's in a hurry to get it done. So you really want to just take your time, especially when it comes to adding trees and bushes. So tight circular motions and build up on your shading. And then using just the edge of the shading spoon, I'm just adding a couple little areas here where there might be some sticks or some branches or twigs or, you know, trunks of the bush or what have you. I'm not really liking what the growth rings are doing to the shading of this. It should be a lot smoother than what I'm getting, but it's the nature of this particular wood that's causing this kind of effect. The darker shading almost following those growth rings, and I really don't like it. I'm not a fan, but we'll keep working at it. Well, there comes a time where you have to make decisions with your wood burning. And guys, with this one here, because of the nature of this cookie and the way that it is burning with these growth rings, I don't like it. I don't like anything about this bush that I've done. Now, if this was a piece of plywood, this would be a nice uniform burn with the overlapping circles. We've done the trees that I've shown you here with wood burning on the show before with the same technique, but because of these growth rings, it's really causing problems. So I'm not doing it. I'm scrapping it. I don't like it. So I have a scraper here, and I'm going to try and scrape this down a little bit to be able to, I guess, soften this burning. If I can soften it a little bit, I may be able to salvage it. But if not, I think we're going to have to go with a whole new process. Now you can sand it, but I find that sanding can make this very muddy. You're better off to go along with the grain with a scraper and take it down to a clean new surface. So I'm just going to try to scrape this down just a little bit and lighten it and see how we make out at the end of that. Well, I've managed to seriously lighten up this tree area, and while I'm still not a fan of it, I did fluke a much better result. I may add a little more shading to that after, but for now, we're going to leave that alone because I'm not quite sure how much more I want to play around with it. We're going to be adding this tree right in here, and I'm going to try a bit of a different method to see how it works out for me. So the first thing that I want to do is I just want to use the small skew. I've got it turned down to about half power, and we're just going to add just a couple of trunk lines. We don't want a lot, just a little. Just like that, kind of a few crow's feet kind of a thing. And now, in order to get the leaves, we're going to try a different technique. I'm going to actually use a writing nib. I think we've pretty much determined for this particular project that due to the nature of this cookie and those growth rings, we will not be using any more shading spoons or shading utensils. That's pretty much a given. We saw how it just didn't work. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to do a bit of a stippling effect. And stippling is basically tiny dots. So I'm going to go around and do a bunch of tiny dots all around here to mimic this tree. Now these at the moment are kind of going on dark. But what I can do is over the growth rings, I can hold the nib a little longer and try to get them to burn into those growth rings and give us some depth. So for now, I'm just trying to establish the size and the shape of our tree there beside the house. Just by adding these little dots. And you might be able to see that in those growth ring areas, those darker growth rings, I'm holding that writing tip ever so slightly longer. I'm just barely touching in the lighter areas and getting that darker circle, but in the dark growth rings, I'm holding it for just a little longer. Okay, so let me just show you what we have there at this point. So this really is just a representation of the leaves on that little bush or that little tree. So with the stippling effect, the closer you put the dots together, it's not necessarily the darkness of the dots, but the closer you put them together, the darker the shading is going to be and the more dense that shading is going to be. So now that I have the initial shape of that marked out, I'm going to go through with more stippling to give it shape, to give it shadow, to give it light. I don't think we need a video of that. It's basically the same thing I've been doing. It's just adding more dots to get more depth. Now, guys, a piece of advice that I can give you is if you're having problems seeing that depth or if you're having problems seeing that shadow, squint at it. Squint at it in order to blur the image to your eyes, and you will be able to see the shapes and the shadows a lot better than if you're just looking at it straight on. So I'm going to go through and try to get this tree looking more like a tree. And when I get that done, I'll show you what we've got at that point. Well, I like the stippling enough that I actually finished up this tree and then added just a little bit of the stippling to the other tree. I kind of want that tree now to fade off into the background. I don't want it so prominent. I didn't like it at first. I kind of like this scraped down version. And unfortunately, that's about all the time that we have for this week. That time went fast. And guys, this is what we're looking at this point in time. This is how far we've taken it. This is how it looks. I didn't really want to rush this show, so we're going to go maybe one more episode and finish this thing off. So hopefully you've got something that looks roughly like this if you're following along. Guys, I'm going to post all the links to these adult coloring books down below. They were just an Amazon purchase if you're interested. There's loads of adult coloring line drawings in there that you could use for wood burning. I'm sure there's something to interest everybody. If you haven't already, or if you found any part of today's show interesting, entertaining, informative, you know what? Why not like and subscribe to the channel? We have an amazing audience base here on the channel, and I'm hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed the content for today. I hope you found this a little bit interesting and informative. I hope you're going to give this a try for yourself. I hope that some of these techniques are going to help you boost your level of wood burning in your shop and in your craft. And more importantly, guys, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.